So I'm here just to, I suppose, discuss briefly today panels, especially panels within the HSE. I'd say a lot of you are probably at the stage where were successful at interview and you got on a panel, or you're possibly awaiting confirmation through your interview results that you're going to be placed on a panel. So I suppose this conversation really is about the expectations of a panel. What does it mean being on a panel, and how a panel essentially works. Now, it's going to go on, I suppose, for only about 20 or 25 minutes. The information that I have here as well is can be used across not just for staff grade entry level positions, but throughout the roles within the HSE. So it'll be relevant information for a lot of people. So what we'll do is, first, a quick introduction. My name is Connor Shanley. I'm working for the Recruitment Reform and Resourcing Programme. And my colleague Frances as well is in the background. She is going to be doing admin and adding a few details in along the way. So just general housekeeping quick enough. All the cameras are turned off, the mics are muted. If anyone has any question about a panel or specific panel related questions, there is a chat function just at the very top of the screen. So feel free to enter whatever questions you may have. As well, if at any stage over the next few weeks you have a question in relation to panels, I'm going to put two email addresses in the chat now. One of them is my own sort of generic email address, so it's or@hse.ie. Feel free to email in any questions that you have about your panel, or about, whatever comes to mind on them. There's also going to be an email put in, and it's called asknrs@hse.ie. This email is possibly the people that are looking after the national staff grade panels. Well, they are the people. So if you have any questions specific to your panel, whether it be dietitian or OT or whatever it may be, you can send it on to asknrs@hse.ie, and Francis will put that in now as well. So we will move on with, I suppose, firstly, I'll just talk a bit about Career Hub. You're probably all aware of Career Hub at the minute. Those of you who aren't, it's a sort of a notification platform, amongst other things, with the HSE, and we're starting to build on this quite regularly. What this is this allows you to enter your occupation of preference and your location of preference. So if you decide you want to be an occupational therapist in Galway, you can enter your details, and then on a weekly basis, you're going to get notifications about those jobs when they become available. For those of you that may not be of a concern at all, you may be on a panel and waiting for various other roles, but just to keep options open, or to, give yourself, the further opportunity to be aware of these campaigns, it's definitely something to look at. There's a QR code there available for the Career Hub, and obviously you can just Google HSE Career Hub and it'll bring you straight through to it and allow you to register. So I'd advise all of you to do that as well. So why we're here, I suppose, to discuss the panel and what is a panel. Before we get into, I suppose, the nitty gritty of the panels can be complicated enough throughout different professions, but for a national staff grade panel, or for an entry level sort of a role, the panels follow a similar enough format. Again, if any question comes up that I don't cover, or any area, please put it in the chat function so I can further discuss it with you. So essentially what a panel is it's a list of candidates recommended for appointment following an interview process. So as you're all aware, the interviews that take place for each campaign, what happens is it's competency-based interviews. So you'll have 5 or 6 competencies that you're interviewed on. You're marked out of 100, and you must score 40 in each competency to be successful and to pass the interview. And what happens at that stage is every person that's successful is placed on a panel. So you may have 50 people successful at interview. They're all put onto the panel, and then they rate everyone's marks in their interview. So whoever gets the highest score in their interview is ranked in order of merit. So whoever scores the highest is first, second highest is second, and so on through the panel. Whoever fails interview and is not successful, their journey on the campaign is over. They will not be placed on the panel. And the whole purpose of the panel is that it feeds all jobs that come in through the lifespan of the panel are going to be issued to the people on that panel. So initially we may have 10 jobs available for occupational therapists nationally. When those 10 jobs are there, the aim of the panel is to fulfill the future roles that come into the pipeline, or into us and the recruitment teams nationally. So there's always a constant things that there may be jobs at the minute. Let's say if we had 10 jobs available, we're unsure of what's going to be coming in the next week or two. We could have 10, we could have 15, we could have 12. We're unsure, but they do come in, and they come in regularly. So that's why we always have to have a large sort of panel in place to feed these jobs as they go through. A good point to note at this stage is panels generally will be in existence for a period of 1 year, and it's at the service's discretion if they want to further extend it to a period of 3 years is the maximum. However, with the national staff grade campaigns, we do find that the panels are exhausted, which means everyone is placed in a job well before the year kicks in. And at that point, we'll be starting preparation work for next year's national staff grade panel. So it's always worth noting, no matter where that you place on the panel, you will get employment and you will get a permanent contract out of it. So the terminology you have to be familiar with is once you are placed on a panel, you're placed on it in order of merit, which I've just discussed. So it's numerical order based on your results at interview. So again, if you haven't passed the interview, you're not placed on the panel. And then we get down to this area here, which is expressions of interest. Now, this is very important because this allows you to sort of, approve or go for the jobs that only interest you. And what happens here, we call them EOIs, so they're an expression of interest. So they're sent out to all eligible candidates on the panel. And I discussed that a bit more in a couple of slides' time about eligible candidates. But let's say if we have 20 people on a panel, instead of us going to number one and going, do you want a job? And then number two, do you want a job? And them saying no and going the whole way down, which is very time consuming. What we do is we issue an expression of interest or an EOI to the whole panel. So everyone gets the same email. We have a dietitian role available in Kildare. Here are the details of the job, details of the service, the line manager involved. And what we do ask you then is if you are interested in this job, please send us an email confirming or expressing your interest to the post. And we will give you a deadline at that point. So please, respond within 2 or 3 days. That's usually the maximum that we give is 2 or 3 days. So you have to be very mindful of those deadlines. And what happens then is whoever's interested in the job expresses their interest. And at the very end of it, we compile a table of those who are interested. And then we find on the panel who is highest in order of merit that has expressed their interest. So you may have, let's say, a panel of 10 people. The first 4 could be already off the panel. The next 2 mightn't want the job. So you could effectively be 6th or 7th on the panel and express your interest. And all going well, you will proceed on to the next stage. So it's always very important to have a good think about it. If you're interested, express your interest. Just because you're 20th, 30th, 40th on a panel, you have no idea what the people above you have done. You don't know if they're already in a job, going to a job, just not interested in the overall job location. So always express your interest within the time frame that's given to you. So make sure to hit within that deadline. If you respond back a day later, the recruitment teams will have already proceeded with the next stage with the person in highest order of merit. So your expression of interest won't be counted at that point. It's all good worth noting as well. If you get an email about a job you're not interested in, you don't have to reply and say you're not interested. Thanks for this. I'm not interested. Because we're only sort of interested, obviously, in the people who do express their interest. Just because you don't communicate with us regularly doesn't mean that we think, oh, they're not interested, I'm not going to send them anything. All we do is get all the emails together that are eligible and we send it to everyone. So it doesn't matter if you've constant communication with us for any reason. If you're not interested, you don't have to reply at all. Obviously, if you want to reply and say thanks or whatever, you can. So then at that stage, if you're highest in order of merit, and you express your interest, you move on then to you'll get an email called it's a recommendation to proceed. This email is basically an invitation to the candidate in the expressed interest list, whoever's highest in the order that they're going to move on to clearances, which is pre-employment clearances. So if you agree at this stage, and it's a very vital part of the process, if you agree at this stage that you want to proceed to the pre-employment clearances and the contract creation stage, you have to be 100% sure at this point if this is exactly the job that you want, for the purposes that if you move on to the next stage, you'll be taken off the panel. So you don't want to find yourself a week or two into the process thinking, oh, do you know what, this isn't for me. I'll see what other jobs are available, because you will effectively have been taken off the panel. And the reason this is brought into place is there has been instances where 4 or 5 weeks into the process, into the pre-employment clearances, someone decides, look, it's not for me, and try to get back on the panel, and they haven't. And the reason being is we've spent 5 weeks trying to get someone into a job, and we have to go back to square one and start the process again, which means that it'll be another 5 weeks before we get back to the same stage we were at. So it could be very, very time consuming. It means there'll be 10 weeks in total getting a person to a particular point because you backed out. And that's the reason why you have to just give it a lot of thought at this stage. At this stage, recommendation of procedure, given time, obviously, to approve it and say you're happy with proceeding. If at that stage you're thinking, no, do you know what? I've thought about it. I'm not interested in it. You can reply back to the recruitment team and say, look, now that I think about it, I don't really want to proceed. Can I be placed back on the panel? And they will put you back on the panel accordingly as well. So it's a very definitive line that you have to be conscious of. Is the recommendation to proceed. The panel stages essentially look like this. So you are successful at interview, you're placed on a panel in order of merit. Expressions of interest go out to the entire panel. A recommendation to proceed to the successful person, and then the clearances and contracting stage, which I'll speak about briefly as well. In terms of the national campaigns, there's a few very important points to note about, let's say, your status on the panel. So the campaigns are typically created for students who are in the final year of study, which means that the person who is applying is not actually qualified at this moment. I know a lot of you may be either finish your exams are underway, you're at various different stages, but until you get your results, which it will be in the next few weeks, and everything is passed, you're only eligible really for this job once you get that qualification. So what we do then is there's two statuses for your profile or for your name on a panel. There's either active or there's dormant. And when you're active on the panel, you get all job offers, all expression. You're fully there on the panel. When you're awaiting something or waiting a document or something to make yourself active, we put a label on it called dormant. And dormant can have a lot of different things attached to it. We may be waiting on a work permit, so you'd be dormant work permit. We may be waiting on registration. For yourselves or undergraduates, we'll have dormant undergraduate. And what that means is you're essentially on the panel, you're in your order of merit, but you're not going to receive any job offers or correspondence from the recruitment teams as you're not fully active and available to accept any role until that registration comes through. So obviously, if it's CORU you're waiting on, or if it's the NMBI for nurses, or other registration bodies, you have to register and get that finalized approved registration number before you can receive job or expressions of interest or job offers. So it's extremely important when you get your results to really get this moving. The reality is it can take like 4 to 6 weeks to get your core registration once you send in all the correct documentation. So I would be strongly advising before you break up for the summer or before you go on that few weeks holidays or just take a break, if you apply for CORU and have all your documentation sent in by the end of May, the reality is it could be start of July or mid-July before everything is fully approved. Once you get everything fully approved, and by the way, if you log on, I suppose if it's CORU that you have to register with, you can log on to CORU and they will give you a list of the documentations that you need. And it'd be worth your while sort of getting started on that. They ask for information, birth certificates, and your degree and your transcripts and things to be certified. So it's no harm in getting started on that if you have availability. And I'll tell you why the quicker, in terms of job prospects, I'll explain it to you now in a couple of minutes, but the quicker you get it done, obviously the quicker you'll get a job. But if you get it done ahead of your peers and ahead of other students, you'll work your way up the panel very, very quickly in terms of job offers. And I'll explain that more in a few minutes. So once you get that core number and everything is through, when you get your interview results from the National Staff Career Campaign, there's a contact email address on that will tell you when you're registered with CORU, please send this on to this email address. And what they will do is they'll log on to the panel and they will make you active. And then you'll start receiving job offers. So if you can, that just obviously explains what I've explained, dormant and undergraduate. So dormant, you're basically silent on the panel. You'll sit where you sit, but the onus is on you to get your registration. When you're active, you will be sitting on the panel getting job offers as normal and moving your way through it as normal. And just to give you a quick, I suppose, idea of how this works. So all these names, they're all fictitious names. Everything that is not real people here. So I just set this up just to show you what I would be viewing if I had to send anything out for a job. So the first table on the top here is basically, so we have a 10-person panel, all in order of merit. So you can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This highlighted area here is your candidate status. So we have the top two are dormant, active, dormant, and so on. What this essentially means, if I get a job that comes into me and I have to send out an expression of interest, the first thing that I do is I go to the candidate status, I see who's active, who's available to actually go into the job at this minute. And what I do is I'll filter it to include the active people. So you can see straight away here. So Joanne Murphy and John Smith, who are first and second, scored very high. They're excluded from me sending out my expression of interest because they're dormant. We're still waiting on Koru registration from them. So it jumps straight down to number 3, who is Stephanie O'Rourke. So you can see a 10-person panel has been reduced to a 5-person panel. I'm only dealing with 5 active people. And I'll send out the expression of interest here, and it'll only go out to them 5 people. So it could be sent out. We might get the case, let's say, where this Diego Morientes, he's number 6 on the panel. So we might have the 2 above him may have already accepted jobs. So it may go straight to him who's at number 6. He might have thought originally 6 was a good bit down, and he was thinking, he mightn't have got a job for a while. The fact is, you don't know who's active in front of you. You don't know who's dormant. You don't know who's accepted jobs. So it's always worth noting that accept or send your expression of interest to any job that interests you in the slightest, because you have no idea what is left above you. It's always a good point as well to note after a few weeks, and I mentioned the point about the panel size, or where you place on the panel, and how quickly you get registered. If you get registered at the quickest possible point and you're registered by the end of June, a lot of your colleagues or your peer, let's say the students or your friends, they may have waited until they came back from a holiday, so they might get their registration through to maybe the middle of July or late July, whereas you have the edge on it. And a lot of these panels are made up and comprised of students who have to get core registration as well. So the sooner you do that, the quicker you're made active. You could be 30th on a panel and 20 above you could be waiting on core, and all of a sudden you're 10th in terms of active people. So it's worth noting that this is a very, very important thing for you to do, and do it as soon as you can. Again, we mentioned important information. So there is information about all your panels. There'll be contained within the emails that you get in relation to your interview results. In a couple of months' time, or 3 months' time, or 4 months' time, if you're thinking, geez, I wonder where I'm on that panel now, you can always email that email address that they give you and just ask them for an update in your panel placing. They can't give you any other information related to anyone else about how big the panel is, about how many is in front of you that are active. Any of that information they will not give to you, but what they can give to you is your current number on the panel. You may start off on the panel at number 30. After 3 months, you could be number 6. So it's good to note that in a couple of months' time, it's moving. It's not too far away. Again, these will move very quickly and very rapidly. But if you do get concerned at any point and want to know the status or the number or your order, you can email in, and they will assign you as well your new number and let you know that, look, you're number 6 on this panel. So it'll give you an extra bit of clarity yourself in relation to the panel. Again, this point about it, if you accept a position and move on to the clearance stage, you cannot hand in your notice. For all of you that may be employed elsewhere within the HSE or outside of the HSE or in any other jobs, when we give you the recommendation to proceed and move on to pre-employment clearances, do not hand in your notice. The only time to hand in your notice is when you have a contract, you have a date ready to start your new job, then you can hand in your notice. We have had it in the past where people have been a bit premature and got a bit too excited and handed in their notice. And the reality is the pre-employment checks can take, anywhere from 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks in some instances. So it is a long time. And if you hand in your notice from day one, you could find yourself 4 weeks out of a job, and then possibly the 2 weeks after, the service might be ready for you to start for 2 weeks. So you could be out of a job. So don't hand in your notice until you get your contract and it's there in front of you. You have it signed, and then you can go to your employer and tell them, look, I'm starting this job, and whatever your entitlement is, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, if that is applicable. And that works out through all your career within the HSE. Always wait till you can see the contract and you've signed the contract, because there can be delays for various reasons, and you don't want to find yourself essentially unemployed while you're waiting for the new position to start. The clearance and contracting stage basically comprises of all this information. Again, you're sent an email saying we need X, Y, and Z off you. These are all the documentations associated with the clearance and with the contracting. So we have your birth cert, your photo ID, your CORU or your NMBI registration, your qualifications, which they'll ask for, your reference checks, again for some people overseas police clearance or work permits, and then your occupational health and your Garda clearance if required. Again, the occupational health clearance falls in, there's a medical assessment done just through sort of email and filling out documentation. You're asked a certain amount of questions just to ensure that you're medically fit for the job. Again, Garda clearance will be in a lot of, I suppose, the HSEP roles. Anywhere that you are around or have interaction with particular age groups of people or vulnerable people, you will need Garda clearance or Garda vetting. And again, that process can take a couple of weeks to go through as well. So it's just something to be extra mindful of. The clearance, again, this is the last stage of the selection process. So it involves the gather all the clearances to ensure that you're suitable for the post, and they'll issue your contract of employment once all your checks are satisfactory. The stage is important as well because the candidate being processed for the post, we have to ensure that they are suitably qualified and can satisfy the HSE and that they have a full comprehensive suite of clearances. Again, it's important to ensure the contract of employment meets the terms and conditions of the post and that the remuneration of the post is in line with the circulars and the memos. There is a lot of documentation available when you're starting your staff grade post. It's all available on the HSE circulars, HR forms that you might need. There's no harm, I suppose, when you're getting into your role just to be very familiar with that as well. I suppose in terms of panels, that essentially is, I suppose, the expectation of a panel and what the panel is for. Your national staff grade campaign, which I forgot to mention, is segregated into regional health area panels. So whichever you selected in your application form is that panel area that you'll be considered for. Again, it has the same rules as all other panels. It's just condensed it down to make it easier for the recruitment teams to manage, but all the information is the same. So I think that basically concludes the basics of panels and sort of the terminology surrounding them. All that information as well is available. I'm going to be putting all that on the Career Hub on one of the, possibly the webinar section as well. I'll put it into there just to give you a deeper insight into it. If anyone has any questions as well, whether there be any complicated, not complicated, even if it sounds basic enough, I'm just going to have the chat function open there. If any of you want to just message me, send a question at all, and we'll be able to answer it. Again, I'll get Frances, or Frances has obviously, sorry, she's put in the rr@hc.ie, is I can be reached at any stage on that. So you can email me in if a question comes up, and we've Ask NRS as well. And NRS are the National Recruitment Service. They look after all the national staff grade panels. If you have a question specific to yourself and your placing on the panel, they are the people that you have to go to. We don't have oversight of the actual panels themselves, but any general queries that you have about panels, or will I be, waiting long? Is this happening? Is this moving? Is anything like that at all? We'll be happy to try and assist you with them queries. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to put in a question, and then we shall call it a day then at that point. No, there doesn't appear to be anything coming through, which is fine. Again, I'll just post our email address again. That'll remain on your Teams in the chat function as well. So whenever you want to just ask us anything, you just please feel free just to send us an email. You can send it to myself or Neve, who is my colleague, that she will help address it either. So feel free over the summer as well. We're obviously working all over the summer, so feel free to ask us anything during that time frame if you're concerned about anything. I suppose we'll leave it at that. So that is great. Listen, thanks very much for everyone in attendance, and the very best of luck with your exams or your results. And thanks so much for attending.